I want to thank Core Studio for making this event happen. I'm Mostapha. I'm a co-founder at Ladybug Tools, and I'm also an alumni of Core Studio. I was here when we did the first one, and I'm very happy to be back here now. This is what, 8th year? 9th year. Well done. So thank you so much. You see, we have a great panel here. I'll try to do it more interactive than the other ones before, and you know, it's just experiment, so we may fail. If it's not, if you don't have any question, we just continue. So to get it started, I'll just, let's start from right. Introduce yourself more than what we have here. I'd like to know, to tell us a little bit about your story and what you get to this place of doing this.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Blank. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Toggle, and we're a digital fabrication company that uses industrial robotics to pre-assemble rebar for reinforced concrete construction. What brought me to this, actually, I don't have a background in either construction or robotics. I actually have a design background. But I think what was interesting to me was you have this material that reinforced concrete that the world relies upon, in vast quantities for really any structure. And if you go onto the construction site and see the way that it gets put in place, it's almost entirely a manual stick building process. And so, I often liken it to an experience that I think everyone has probably had, which is assembling IKEA furniture. If you imagine that, you had to assemble an entire skyscraper the same way that you assemble a piece of IKEA furniture, you get the idea of, basically what it's like to install rebar, except everything just weighs quite a bit more. And so what we do is we use the same type of technology that you would see probably most familiarly from automotive, the large format industrial robotics, to pre-assemble rebar offsite in a factory environment, which is safer, it's more accurate, it's more efficient, it's a more comfortable and working environment for the labor that is involved in the process. And then we deliver it to the construction site where it can be dropped into place. The concrete can be poured, that much sooner. And so it really accelerates the overall build time. So that's Toggle. And we are a startup. We're 5 years old, but still definitely consider ourselves to be a startup. We're venture backed. We're based here in New York, but we have a production facility in Pennsylvania. That's me.
Thank you.
So 2 parts to this question. So who the heck am I, and who the heck is TestFit? So let's start with who the heck am I? So I am actually on day 5 as a TestFit employee. That is, so tons of experience. That's after 16 years as an Autodesk employee, worked in Revit product management for many, many years. You can corner me later on and berate me about all your hopes and dreams that were dashed by Revit, and I'm glad to have that conversation. Also, help to get that product up into the cloud with cloud work sharing. If you really hate cloud work sharing or remember C4R, you can definitely yell at me. I'm probably the single most responsible person for that product on earth. So I had a long tenure there, and I actually recently made the decision to jump with TestFit, which is a great segue into why I'm with TestFit and what we do. So I joined TestFit, and Clifton and I actually had a good relationship going for a couple of years now. And one of the things that really jumped out to me about TestFit was that it was a company that was really innovating around the reality that the built environment is a business, and you've got to be successful at that business in order to enable yourself to do some of the art part. And I just thought that was really refreshing, because there's been tons of innovation about the art of sculpting a building, but there's not as nearly as much investment around the real business of the built environment. And that was really something that was exciting for me. And so what does TestFit do? TestFit does, as the name implies, test fits in a real-time manner based around a number of different configurators that are doing common typologies of a building. So it's extremely fast to be able to understand how to fit your building in a site, and to understand the key factors of the capacity of that building, the cost of that building, as well as the overall investment to make that building a reality. And so bringing those things together in real time is an exciting thing, and that's what we're excited to bring into the market. So just like these guys, venture funded business, you're welcome to reach out to us, and we'd love to talk to you about the product. So that's my answer to get started.
Okay, thank you. What does that R stand in your CRO?
R is Chief Revenue Officer. Okay. So
it's not Revit.
Yeah, it's not Revit. Nope.
Nope.
Although I probably will be chief Revit officer in the company, given my background. But no, I got pulled in just to help really scale the business. We got product market fit, and now we really got to build that business out.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. My name is Badri. I'm the founder and CEO of T2D2. Is R2D2's most famous cousin. Oh, well, no, actually, T2D2 is a prop tech startup. Some of you might recognize if you were here at AECtech a couple of years ago. We had a presentation about T2D2. We use computer vision, narrow form of AI to do facade damage detection, not just facades, but also structures. So it's applicable to the larger infrastructure space. So we were part of Thornton Tomasetti until last year. So we launched as a separate company, an independent startup in July of last year, height of pandemic. But today we're already, scaling. We're getting venture funding to scale into the future. So what else can I say? I'm sure, as we explore more topics today, we can get a deeper dive into what I do.
Pretty good. Thank you.
Amazing. Nice to meet you all, and you guys. My name is Federico Negro. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Canoa. We are also a venture-funded startup. A little bit of a different focus. We are strictly in the commercial interiors vertical, and actually even within that, strictly in the FF&E vertical. We started this company almost 2 years ago now. I spent many years as the head of physical product for WeWork, and so helped scale that product for several years. And so a lot of the messiness around retrofitting existing structures all over the world. We did about 600 buildings during my tenure there. And one of the big issues that I sort of kept coming back into was that the world of interiors is often ill supported by traditional AEC technology, number one, and number two, that something that we're not all looking at, but there is a mountain of work in the retrofitting and interiors of our existing cities, especially in the West. And so probably where a lot of people in this crowd are going after ground up construction, we are going into existing buildings who tend to have a lot more transactions, a lot faster transactions. We've done multiple projects within the same building, within the same space, even within the same year. And so we're trying to capture not the big mega projects, but the small ones. So our model is we are a B2B marketplace. We build technology to plug into people who manage large portfolios. We help them manage all of their assets from an inventory perspective, and then we help them move those assets, whether they need new ones or whether we're reusing old ones. So from a mission perspective, life extension, reusability, all of these kinds of things are things that we're going after.
Okay, great.
That's us.
Thank you. So I wanted to follow up with the question, like existential questions of why does your company exist? I think you already answered that. So if we move forward, we know why it exists. If your company is successful in a year or 2 or 3 years, 5 years, whatever is your roadmap, how the world will look like, how the AEC industry looks like with your company being really successful.
What do you want to start?
You just start.
All right. I have no idea how AEC will look like. I spent, this is a little bit of a different take for me. For those of you who know me, I was one of the founders of a company called Case, which we founded when I was 26. It was also in New York City. It was also in the middle of a very deep recession. That company was 100% focused on digital transformation in our industry. And before that, I was at Shop Architects. After that, I was at WeWork. And what WeWork acquired actually Case in 2015. I think one of the things that I realized is that the whole concept of trying to advance the industry or change the industry was the wrong problem to solve for me. So Canoa is going after something that's very meaningful to me, which is the amount of waste in TI construction and interiors. There's a lot of sort of constructing and demolishing and construction and demolishing. And we feel not only altruistically that there's an opportunity there to lower a lot of waste, but also that there's a huge commercial opportunity. And so for us, it's about going after a problem that we're passionate about, that we think has a lot of opportunity for it. I don't expect it in any way to have any impact on the larger AC community. That's not a goal. It's not an objective. But we do want to provide better and healthier spaces for the end users and the occupiers. That's why we are a stay behind company. We actually, oversee a lot of these spaces that we're plugging into. That sort of touch, that proximity to the end user for us is something that is fundamental, which is why we picked this space.
Great, thank you.
If I may, I'll also use that as a prompt to talk a little bit about my own background, which I failed to do on the last time around. I have been a computational scientist, so that I was an applied scientist working on DoD projects for many years within Thornton Tomasetti, previously Weidlinger, which merged with Thornton Tomasetti. So then I was working on many machine learning applications, computer vision specifically, and but Thornton Tomasetti on whole was a big leader in the AEC space, but I was in this corner working on some government projects. But I saw that there were other colleagues in my own company, who practiced, structural engineering, structural forensics, renewal, and I saw their processes. There was a lot of manual processes involved. For example, the way inspections are being done for facades or structures, you still have people hanging off ropes at great heights with either clipboards or iPads, taking photographs, taking copious notes, going back to their offices, trying to figure out, which picture came from what floor and all that. So there's a lot of analog, inefficient processes involved. And I realized that, of course, some of the technology that I have been working on, which is actually really growing, exploding, I should say, in the past few years, it has a direct application here to transform and disrupt the way things are done. So that's how T2D2 came about. So I started off as an internal R&D project back in 2018, and then the company also saw that the proof of concept really was something that they saw a lot of value in. They understood that it has growth potential, so they invested it, and we grew it to a point where it's now like an independent, successful startup. It's living on its own. And I, my background was not in startups. It was not in prop tech even, but I have learned a whole lot in the last 12 months, about what it is to basically start a business from scratch and make it successful. What is it that venture companies are looking for? What is it that the market is looking for? The product market fit, the term that I've heard probably a million times now. That's something that's really important.
So 2 to 3 years. So we got to keep this within some reality. So one of the key vision ideas of TestFit is to democratize informed building design. That's one of the key ideas. Actually, Clifton, that's his handle on our internal Slack system, because that's a key idea that we're after. But if you want to think about what we're trying to accomplish, it's asserting that technology can do a different job for the design team, because very much so, if we look at the primary job of technology is very much subservient to the team and capturing information that are and decisions that are done by the project team versus really facilitating those decisions to be made in the first place. And it's kind of a fundamentally different job if your technology is really informing those decisions in a better way than capturing them. And so if we kind of play out that scaling over the next 2 to 3 years, it's really all about getting that information in the fingertips of those project teams to inform the right decisions from the very, very, very beginning. Because, at least for me personally, I spent 16 years trying to make that a reality on the back of a tool like Revit, when so much of the important decisions are already made before you even model your very first wall in a tool like that. And so, it's really that opportunity to innovate up in that space where, the fundamentals of that project are defined. And so that's the kind of key thing we're trying to get out in that time horizon. I mean, going further than that, there's all sorts of other, unicorns and rainbows I can usher out. But I think realistically, it's just, getting that power of understanding that in as many hands as possible.
Thank you so much.
So I think that, as Rodrigo said, we're not necessarily trying to change the entire industry so much as be a part of, the evolution that's happening. And on our end for Toggle, what I see happening is, the world is building larger projects, more complex projects, more urban projects. And as a result of that, you have a more complex job site essentially with less space, more vertical. And so there's a trend toward prefab, toward modular, toward, taking some of that complexity complexity off of the construction site and, doing it in a factory type environment. And, you hear a lot about, construction is becoming manufacturing, or construction should be manufacturing and all of that. I think that goes a little bit too far, at least for the short term. I think, everybody knows that, this industry is one that changes incrementally. It's not something that, very often gets revolutionized overnight, because, it's really a symphony of all of these different trades and, processes that have to work together. So for Toggle, where we fit into that, I think is really helping to bridge the digital technology that's come, so far into the design side of things into the physical building side of things, whether that's fabrication or actual construction. We're helping to bring in a new set of tools, just like, new sets of tools have always come into the construction industry. And it's not about replacing labor. It's about really empowering the people who are doing the jobs to be more productive, to be safer, to be more effective and efficient at what they do, and enable them to do more, to have more options. So I think that's really, the overall kind of trend, that we're part of in the evolution that we're seeing.
Okay, this is great. So just using so I hear evolution. We heard about connection a lot. You're like being part of an ecosystem, the things that are happening. This will be my last question, and then we will open it up. So you talked about what your startups are doing. Where do you want to get? So what are the areas, what are the untapped areas that you wish there wasn't a startup that you could work with? I wish there was something, as there was another startup. If we had that, we could have teamed up and do much better. Is there anything like that? And I know like a lot of audience here, maybe they will start their own startup at some point, and they're looking like, well, yeah, okay, I see like hands here. So what would be that startup that you just sometimes say, I just wish there was like a company or startup was doing this and was doing it good?
I'll bite. So we heard the word FreeCon this morning, which I thought was fascinating. I love that idea, but the ability to cost and understand what's the logistical requirements as well as the cost requirements is like, that is like the art of so many construction companies on earth. And I'm not aware of a lot of companies that are really innovating in that particular space. And I think there's huge opportunities to almost forget about what your spreadsheet says and just look at the past history of projects that exactly what they cost, and effectively train a neural net to do that in a much more efficient way. So that for me is the area there's nothing there. And we'd love to talk to a great pre-con startup to do the cost side of the equation for what we do. And to our knowledge, it doesn't exist.
People are taking notes.
Go build it. We'll talk.
One comment I would make is not directly, but I have seen that recently there have been so many startups that have come out that, basically that, anything that we were doing using Excel is now a SaaS startup. So it's really, if it's being repeatedly used for anything, there is a SaaS startup already that is doing it. In fact, there's spreadsheet.com also, I believe. It's a SaaS startup, but really, I think it is going in the right direction. I mean, it is helping offload a lot of things that are repeatedly done, and maybe making it more efficient, API connections to each product, make it interoperable. And I think that trend is good. That's a comment I would make. I can't think of any particular function that is not yet a startup service that is out there.
Sure. I don't know if this is a startup, but I think one of the challenges in our space is that there's so much risk associated with change. So to adopt a new way of doing things in construction, or really in architecture or engineering, you're sometimes betting the farm, right? Like you really can't afford to have a failure on the types of projects that we're talking about. And so it just makes adopting new ways of doing things, that much riskier, that much more difficult, politically and all of that. So, I think it would be great to see some model of, vertically, holistically, like really trying a lot of new things. And I think that, some companies like, Katera have tried to do that, have tried to like bite it all off. And, we've seen what happens when you overextend. So I think it's a really difficult question, but, I don't know if it's the developer side, like, saying we're going to commit to like doing things in a totally different way, or if it's the GC, or if it's all of them together. But I think that's
What is GC?
what's that?
What is GC?
Sorry, the general contractor.
Thank you.
Whether it's all of these parties, having to work together, or even like the government, financing, I've seen in other markets, government stepping in and saying, okay, we're going to do some buildings in a completely different way. We're going to bring in all the technology. So something around that, something to reduce the risk of trying new things within this space would be really interesting.
Federico?
So I don't know. I mean, I think most of us who build or have built companies know that partnerships are fundamental. So if we were to sort of like list out some things, I'm not sure how helpful it is, but I'm generally, I think, really excited about where the physical environment is today and how ripe it is for a lot of startups. I think that if we had 1,000x growth in startups, then we might begin to actually see some movement. There's just so much room to grow here. For us, I'd say the biggest advantage or partnerships that we're seeing are actually not in industry at all, right? Like payments processing like Stripe, or other companies like that out there allow us to effectively stand up operations that even 5 years ago would have cost us $5 to $10 million to do, and now we can do it through a couple of APIs, and in a couple of weeks you're up and running. And so the cost of doing things today is just so much cheaper than it used to be, and in a year or two it's going to be even cheaper yet. And so you hear somebody who literally is just bending rebar for people. Like when I was starting out 15, 20 years ago, if somebody said that, it'd be like, it sounded really cool, but how do you even penetrate that market? And there you are, right? Like you're doing it. This is stuff that like the entry points are just almost infinite. And so what I would challenge people to do instead, if you are interested in going into entrepreneurship, is to decide whether you're trying to build something that optimizes the general way of doing things already. So like, are you an optimizer of what exists already, or you're trying to do something that exists outside of that framework? Because most companies today that we see, like all these SaaS companies, they're in our industry specifically, right? They're what we would call sort of 10x optimizers. We're going to take whatever it is you're already doing, and we're going to make that 10x better. That's amazing. So, but that's this level of risk, and you're playing within a very specific sandbox. There's other companies that say, no, we're actually going to test out a different business model altogether. And how do we do that? The vertically integrated companies, the reason why it's so difficult, and we heard from Shop before, the reason why it's so difficult, it's because you're going after a fundamentally different business model, which means that in every respect, there's a whole level of education that has to happen and all of these kinds of things. The reason why you hear those types of companies raising 20, 30, 50 million, $100 million, billions of dollars in the case of Katera, is because that vertical integration requires a lot more convincing, a lot more money. And so you have to make sure that your business can support that investment and actually take it and make it a lot bigger. So even within investment, there's a lot, or within startups, there's a lot of different things that one can do, and just be careful or mindful of what it is that you're trying to go after.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We're opening up to questions.
Mostapha's early question.
Can you wait for the mic, actually? Yep. Oh.
Mostapha's earlier question, and to phrase it a little bit differently, how do you see your companies exiting, or since three of you have already been through some of this bigger company stuff, maybe your exit is not an exit, maybe it's a sustainable growth into a larger firm and no SPAC, no IPO. Do you have a vision for that? Do you have a principal way that you want to be in 10 years? Or, some of you have companies that are part of a bigger, or you're all cogs in the wheel, right? But maybe you can survive, on your own as a different exit strategy than others have taken?
I'll go first.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
Because I literally just got done
Is that-
fundraising, and so I've had to answer this
Yeah,
question.
go for
So if you get into, this is something I tell, I do a little bit of mentorship with young entrepreneurs often. And one of the things I often talk about is the distinction or the difference between solving a problem technically and solving a problem commercially. And those things are not the same. You build a startup because you want to build a business. So I have no qualm saying that I am trying to reduce waste in our industry. That's in the FF&E specifically industry.
What is that FF thing?
FF&E, furniture, mostly furniture, lighting, equipment, those kinds of things. What we like to say is if you turn a building upside down, whatever falls out of it, that's our scope.
I'm the abbreviation police here.
Just no people
For people
in
who
it, just
don't
the
know what
stuff,
this
right?
thing,
Yeah.
and this one has too many F's, so it's risky.
So, imagine the people aren't there, whatever falls out of that building, that's our scope. So we're building, our objective is, and we're hyper focused on this, we're going to build a multi-billion-dollar market. That's it. Like anything shy of that for us is not really what we're going at, because we want to have impact. And in order for us to have impact, we need to have a large company. So you don't go raise VC money if you're trying to start a boutique consulting company. That has its place, and it's a different place. And I've already done that in my life, and I decided I do want to do something different. And so I like impact. I like going big. Otherwise, I'd be doing something else. And I'm not planning on exiting. Exiting would also be for me, it's like plan B or C. Our objective is to go big, to become sustainable, go public, and do all of those kinds of things. So then in the future, Canoa should be a household name in the B2B world in commercial real estate. Unapologetic.
Are you hiring?
We are.
Okay, people.
Well, my answer is also similar, actually. So we are looking to grow. I mean, our goal is not right now. We're not looking at the exit door primarily. We're looking to grow as far as I think our potential is almost limitless. We want to reach as high as we can. I'm sure you've heard the term digital twin a lot. So we use that internally as well. So we're building digital twins of the skins and skeletons of these buildings. And throughout, we look at these digital twins throughout the lifetime of these assets. And we want to basically build a digital clone of Manhattan, of Chicago, of the major metropolitan cities around the world. Look at all kinds of assets, not just buildings, but also bridges and other infrastructure. So, the potential to grow is almost limitless, and we want to reach that potential.
I think Fede said it pretty well. I probably would have said roughly the same thing. I didn't, at least I'll just speak on myself personally, although I can't necessarily speak on behalf of Clifton, our co-founder. But I didn't leave my comfortable confines of Autodesk to join a company and go sell it. We're about trying to change the job for technology for the better at the very beginning of a project. And that's going to take some scale and some money and, a big outcome, hopefully in the end.
My answer is
the same. It's interesting because we're in this industry where, architecture firms, engineering firms, construction firms, like so many of them have been around for generations or like over 100 years. And so, there's really an opportunity to build, a lasting business, a lasting company, and a lot of institutional knowledge. But I think we're also at this kind of transition point where, you hear the term digital native, right? For people like who are born, after the internet or after smartphones or whatever. And I think, the same thing could be said is happening in this space, that, you're going to have companies that were born after, the transition to, digital as the main way of doing things. And those companies are going to be really different from the companies that came before, right? It's like going from horses to cars. Like it's just a total paradigm shift. So I think, for us, and I'm sure for some of these guys as well, like, we want to be part of that next generation. And it's a totally different format for a business and for a company if you start thinking this way versus, the way that was done before.
So no exit strategy, I get from that?
No, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of building to be done ahead. And so I don't see
Good one.
an exit to that.
So yeah, we have one more, but you're hiring. What about the rest? Are you guys hiring for people here?
Yes.
Yeah, always.
Yeah? Okay. If you're looking for a job, go for it.
Yeah, I have a two-part question. First is, what has been the most difficult technical or business challenge in your product development so far? And second is, for the young entrepreneurs or design technologists, can you describe the harsh reality of AECtech tech startup, which no one talks about?
So the second one is like a movie or something, horror movie.
Don't start a company in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
That's a good one. What was the first question? I didn't.
What
quite
was
get
the hardest technical or financial commercial challenge that you had during your startup experience?
Yeah, look, anybody who's any company that's early enough, you effectively have this, I don't know, I see it as like you're deep sea diving, you have one tank of oxygen and that's all you got. You might get 2 or 3 swings at it. You've picked the space, something that's meaningful to you. But I think that and I'm a product person, so I think a lot of us who are product or technically minded probably make the mistake of thinking that the product that is in your mind is the product that the world wants or needs. And that's a difficult thing for us to detach ourselves from because it's not the case. And so, for us, it's can you get to the point where you have enough traction to get to that next tank of oxygen, and then enough traction to the next, and each time the expectations get higher, right? So we are on our second round of fundraising, and the expectations. So now we've gotten to like the other side of the deep end on this pool, but there's yet another pool that's much bigger now, and you have to get to that side. And so you have to. It's really hard emotionally. It's really difficult. You have to be really ready for a lot of rejection from all sides. You have to be super honest with everybody around you, your family, your teams, all of that. And you also have to give yourself a little bit of a break. You know that you've bought yourself, again, 2 or 3 swings at this, and that's it. But thousands of startups exist. Thousands may raise money, but it's not easy. It's not an easy life. It's, I think we see it from the outside as like something that is incredibly enticing, but like you live day to day at the beginning, and you hope to get to the point where you live week to week, and then you hope to get to the point where you live month to month, and then quarter to quarter, and then year to year. And at that point, I guess you've made it. But you have to know all of that stuff. This is my second, probably my third time, I guess, doing it. Even my first job at Shop, I started when there was only like 16 or 17 people. By the time I left, we were 120, which even for an architecture firm, 10x growth in 3-4 years was a huge. So anyway, I think it's for me, it's not technical. It's not a technical problem. It's commercial, and it's about you and your team. Like, it's about being able to keep everybody on that little boat, keeping moving forward in the same direction and just trying to get to the next step.
All right. So first question, technically it's keeping everything in real time. That's one of the things TestFit does, and it's gnarly hard. It's part of the reason why it's engineered the way it is as a desktop app, just not at all trivial. From the business side, because we're a B2B SaaS company, just the overall go-to-market machine of trying to go sell, and it's very complex these days, but the business flywheel is not at all trivial. You don't just start calling people and sell to them. Like it in a modern SaaS company with account-based sales and marketing, like it is a very complex thing. So navigating that's really challenging. And then second question was what?
I forgot too.
Oh, come on.
on.
What was the question back there? Oh, harsh reality. Yes, I even had an answer to this one. Thank you. So typically the most demanding customers are the cheapest, and no one wants to say that. But it's the truth. And those that have the most willingness to spend are often the least demanding and aren't as vocal about what they really want, which is a bummer because you really want to sell to those people.
Can I say something to that? There's, so in startups, top of funnel qualification of leads is a science. So it used to be when I was working in an architecture firm that being super detailed about every scope and all this stuff like that is really meaningful when you're buying services or you're buying hours. When you're buying other types of services, being that person will often get you disqualified. So understand what you're trying to buy, because you're buying something different. And so we look, this is so incredibly true. We actually, especially early on, we see these things as boulders that we actually just sidestep and we say, okay, we'll call them a year from now. And we just set them aside and we don't pursue.
If I may try attempt at an answer, what I have found as a challenge is, I come from a technical background, so I want to build a product and I have a vision, and if it were up to me, I would just build the product completely, make it as good as I have it in my vision and then sell. But the harsh reality is that that will not work. I have been told, not just by investors, but also from other entrepreneurs who've done this before, that it just doesn't work. You have to sell. You have to sell not just your product, but also your vision. And then once you sell, you want to make sure that you meet the expectations of the people who sell. So it's a very fine balance. I have found out that you have to keep selling and you have to keep optimizing at the same time. It's a very thin line that you have to walk on. That's been a challenge, but it's something that I'm enjoying.
So on our side, the biggest technical challenge is that rebar is just an incredibly difficult material to work with when you're looking to automate, because traditionally automation is about putting together components and parts that actually fit together and are meant to go together, whereas rebars are really rough and kind of unpredictable material. So it's actually something that trade people can do in the field is react to those differences, and and they can also just hit it with a hammer in the right place when they need to, and it's harder to automate that sort of thing. So we often run into challenges and say that it's actually easier to build a car with robots than it is to build rebar with robots. So that would be the technical side, but I agree with all of these guys that the technical stuff is like table stakes. Like you just kind of have to assume you're going to solve the technical stuff, given the time and the resources and the people. And it's actually, the time and the people and having, the business to back it up. That's really the hard stuff. I think that's probably like the biggest misconception, is that you go into particularly a technology startup and you think, oh, we're going to be like in a lab all day building cool technology. But that's just like the basics. Like it's all the other stuff, and particularly the people both in your company and your customers, that where the real challenges are.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or follow-up questions? I don't know, how much time do we have? Okay, questions from online audience? We just ignore them. Okay, great. You didn't come here. Sorry, you don't get that. So, yeah, a round of applause for a great panel.